As earlier on, Israel launched a strike against Hamas leadership in Qatar on Tuesday as they considered a U.S. proposal for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. For more on what happened, let's take you out to Greg Balcott with this report.
Officials in Qatar are assessing the damage after Israeli airstrikes hit the Hamas political leadership on Tuesday. It's a significant escalation in the two-year war. Qatar is a major U.S. ally, and the targets of the attack were reportedly considering a new peace proposal when the strikes happened. A Hamas spokesperson says the leadership survived the attack, though the son of a Hamas senior leader was killed, and families of the hostages are now expressing, quote, grave concern.
I am shaking with fear. It could be that at this very moment, the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, basically assassinated my Matan.
The airstrikes were partly a response to a deadly terror attack at a Jerusalem bus stop on Monday. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the strikes were, quote, totally justified.
These are the same terrorists who planned, launched, and celebrated the horrific massacres of October 7th.
And the U.S. was informed before the bombs were dropped.
Unilaterally bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation, does not advance Israel or America's goals.
The peace process now faces an uncertain future. It's not clear if Hamas will continue negotiating after these attacks, or if Qatar is willing to continue mediating between Hamas and Israel. And much of the international community is condemning the airstrikes, saying they threaten to destabilize an already dangerous situation.
All parties must work towards achieving a permanent ceasefire, not destroying it.
The airstrikes came just hours after Israel ordered a total evacuation of Gaza City ahead of a ground offensive there. In Tel Aviv, Greg Balcott, Fox News.
All right, it was quick that the Israelis identifying this, taking credit for it, taking responsibility, saying the IDF conducted a precise strike targeting the senior leadership of Hamas terrorist organization. For years, these members of the leadership have led the organization's operations and are directly responsible for the brutal October 7th massacre. Let's continue on here on this conversation and bring in right now national security policy with JINSA, Blaise Misztal. Thank you so much for joining us here on LiveNOW from Fox.
And I think here, similarly, President Trump wanted to give some reassurance to and some public backing to the state of Qatar. But I imagine that this operation was conducted with the full support of the United States.
And it was kind of in contrast to what we've seen with previous Israeli strikes, that Benjamin Netanyahu coming out almost immediately and taking credit, claiming the strike, saying Israel initiated it, Israel conducted it, and Israel takes full responsibility for it. Why do you think he did so quickly?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is obviously the sensitivity of hitting inside of Qatar, and I think not wanting for there to be speculation or finger pointing going on there. But I think the bigger reason is because this strike was meant to send a very clear message, first and foremost to Hamas, but also to the rest of the world, that if you attack Israel, this is what happens. You will be hunted, you will be found, and justice will be served wherever you are. And I think it's very important for Israel's security, but also for U.S. security, because with the same terrorists and the same enemies that want to kill Israelis want to kill Americans, and for them to know that they won't be safe anywhere, anytime, makes the rest of us safer.
Is the biggest concern in terms of the United States, because obviously they talked about a sovereign ally that Qatar is the concern of them going after Hamas in this location, in this particular spot, potentially a mishap happening and something escalating in a big way. Is that the biggest concern?
Look, that is certainly an issue, and Israel has talked about the precise intelligence and careful selection of weapons they used on this strike. In fact, they've said they specifically chose a smaller warhead than they would have otherwise. Can't continue hiding out in luxury while waging this war. That can only hopefully bring peace faster. So I think, if anything, we should be more optimistic today than yesterday that maybe this conflict will finally come to an end.
Very interesting. I do want to rewind just a little bit because we're talking about the strike in Qatar there from Israel, precise strike against Hamas leadership. And Hamas, what they say is that top leaders survived this strike, that 5 lower-ranking members died. And, of course, whenever Hamas says something, you have to take it with a grain of salt. Will we eventually know how accurate that might be? What would indicate some of those maybe inaccuracies?
Yeah, I think certainly both Israel and the U.S. intelligence agencies are conducting their own assessment and evaluation of the strike and what happened and who was hit and who survived. I think the very clearest indicator was if we see any of these Hamas leaders appearing in public, conducting interviews or being seen in media in the coming days as proof of life, the longer they are out of the public eye, I think the more questions and doubts will be raised whether, in fact, they were hit or at least injured.
And we also heard from Netanyahu, who said that they will go anywhere to take down Hamas leadership after the October 7th attack. I do want to ask you about just the intelligence, because we've seen just the strength of the Israelis in terms of their intelligence in previous precise strikes and different operations that unfolded. Is this just another indication of how well informed, how their intelligence for Israel is functioning?
I think almost certainly. Although I have to say, compared to previous strikes on Hamas leadership, like the one that killed a Hamas leader inside the Iranian presidential reception house, guest house last year, this one I don't think required that a unique or exquisite an intelligence capability, because everyone knows that Hamas leadership is living in Qatar. They're not exactly hiding. That is what makes this so ludicrous, that these terrorists have been living in luxury in plain view, and it hasn't really been that hard to find them. It's just been a matter of having the will to go after them, which clearly Israel now has.
All right, very good. Blaise, anything else that you're looking forward to? Anything else that we should keep our eye on? You mentioned potential ceasefire. You say it's kind of optimistic that maybe even with the Qataris out of it, we might move forward closer to that. What comes next?
Yeah, I think next is going to be the question of can Israel and the United States work together to keep mounting pressure on Hamas? This is the time for Washington to press Doha to kick whoever from Hamas is left out of the country. It's time really for the United States to lead the diplomatic push to get Hamas to finally agree to return the hostages, give up its arms, and end this war.
I know President Trump is working very hard to do just that. Blaise Misztal with JINSA, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate your insight here on Live Now.
Thank you, Andy.
All right, thank you so much. All right, great conversation about this. A major potentially escalation as Israel targeting Hamas leadership inside Qatar. Of course, Karoline Leavitt saying it will not advance Israel's or America's goals. But obviously, they say taking out Hamas leadership is a goal that they can all get behind. And we're just hearing right now from the president about this exact topic here on social media. I want to put it up here for you and read it out, saying, "I'm pleased to report of course, some more talk about this, saying, I always fight for justice, never give up. Hamas, release the hostages now." Of course, talking about a report of a Princeton student whose citizen is an American citizen, just released by Hezbollah, now safely in the American embassy in Iraq after being tortured for many months, saying you'll always fight for justice and never give up. Hamas, release the hostages now. So, of course, some of those proxy groups from Iran, Hamas, and Hezbollah all involved. Let's take you out to some of those comments, though, as we were talking about from Karoline Leavitt. As she mentioned, she read a statement about this precise strike in Qatar. Let's take you out to the White House from just a little bit ago.
Was notified by the United States military that as Israel was attacking Hamas, which very unfortunately was located in a section of Doha, the capital of Qatar. Unilaterally bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation and close ally of the United States that is working very hard and bravely taking risks with us to broker peace, does not advance Israel or America's goals. However, eliminating Hamas, who have profited off the misery of those living in Gaza, is a worthy goal. President Trump immediately directed Special Envoy Witkoff to inform the Qataris of the impending attack, which he did. The president views Qatar as a strong ally and friend of the United States and feels very badly about the location of this attack. President Trump wants all of the hostages in Gaza and the bodies of the dead released, and this war to end now. President Trump also spoke to Prime Minister Netanyahu after the attack. The Prime Minister told President Trump that he wants to make peace, and quickly. President Trump believes this unfortunate incident could serve as an opportunity for peace. The president also spoke to the Emir and Prime Minister of Qatar and thanked them for their support and friendship to our country. He assured them that such a thing will not happen again on their soil.
All right, just listening in there, that was the brief statement from Karoline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, talking about this precise strike by Israel. Netanyahu speaking with President Trump, also coming out and claiming responsibility, saying, quote, Israel initiated it, Israel conducted it, and Israel takes full responsibility. Let's take you right now out to the Prime Minister there. He's made several visits to the United States, speaking with President Trump. Let's take you out to some of these comments from a bit ago, talking about the strike.
Our soldiers were killed by Hamas terrorists in Gaza, and 6 Israeli civilians were brutally murdered in a bus stop in Jerusalem. This morning, Hamas proudly took credit for both of these actions. At noon today, I convened the heads of Israel's security organizations and authorized a surgical precision strike on the terrorist chiefs of Hamas. These are the same terrorists who preach those who perpetrated this horror. And today, Israel and I have kept that promise. Now, much of the world, including much of the democratic world, or governments at least, have shamefully forgotten October 7th. But I don't forget, and Israel will never forget. Never. There was a time when Jews could be murdered with impunity, but since the founding of the State of Israel, those days are over. On this day, as in previous days, Israel acted wholly independently, and we take full responsibility for this action. And this action can open the door to an end of the war in Gaza. Israel has accepted the proposal put forward by President Trump to end the war, beginning with the immediate release of all our hostages, which have been held in the dungeons of Gaza for 700 days. If President Trump's proposal is accepted, the war can end immediately. We can begin once again to pursue the expansion of peace in our region for the benefit of all. But I want to close by directing my words to the people of Gaza. Don't be derailed by these murderous terrorists, by these killers. They don't care a hoot about you. They live in sumptuous villas. You can't imagine how sumptuous.